Alrighty, so welcome to Let's Go Live. I'm Gigi Meyer and I have with me book podcaster Charity. Welcome.
Hello.
I have so many questions for you. I'm so excited to talk to you. You're my second, you're my first book podcaster.
Okay.
You're like my second bookstagrammer.
Okay.
So these questions are like super fresh.
All right. I'm usually on the other end of asking the questions, so this is a little strange for me now.
Turning the tables on you, right?
The pressure.
Do you ever watch that show, The Office? He's like, Michael Scott is like, how the turntables.
I love The Office.
I know, that show is so good. Okay, so starting from the top, tell people what your handle is and where they can find you.
Okay, so my handle is Booktrovert Reader. You can definitely find me on Instagram. I'm practically almost every social media platform for book reviewing, so Goodreads, Storygraph, all the works. I am thinking about TikTok, but that's a little daunting, so I'll think about that.
Oh yeah, TikTok's its own animal. I feel like, and it's so hard because you try to be where the readers are at, which is basically like everywhere, like you're saying.
Right. Yeah, it's definitely tough, and I'm just getting into the video reel realm, and it's a challenge. So doing TikToks where it's like straight up videos, I'm like,
Why are you used to doing them landscape like this way?
no, I'm not used to being on camera. I'm used to like hold a book with my hand, a hand model, and doing videos is definitely not my comfort realm, but I've been getting into it. So now that I've been like slowly acclimating myself to it, I think I might go into TikTok. So,
Oh yeah, step into your fear, baby.
so story of my life.
I know, right? Okay, so starting at the top, what inspired you to even start a book podcast? I mean, it's very niche-y. I love them, but they're niche.
Right. Oh, that's so hard to say because I thought about getting into YouTube and I totally bombed that because I was so scared. I was scared. And I just gave up on the idea for 6 months. And then I think my brother-in-law did a podcast himself, and he just read a script. He read it word for word, and I was like, I can do that.
Okay.
So, and I think I had a desire to start talking to more people about books, but I just didn't know how because I was so shy and timid.
Yeah.
So that was my best way to do it, to just get into that idea of talking to people about books.
So let me ask you this. Did you do your own script also? So did he just type out his own script and then went to his, I guess, microphone?
Yeah, he did that. And then I just okay, I can do that too. So I did a kind of a chapter by chapter summary as my first one. And that kind of gave me a guideline of what to talk about. And I literally this is what this person did. This is what this person did. So it just got me into it per se. It was just a fresh start into it, and then I'm evolving now. So
well, and I think that's with many people, right? That's with authors, that's with book reviewers. It's you start one place because you think okay, well, I can do this. And then I think the rest of the staircase is revealed to you as long as you take the first few steps, right?
You're right. And I think I had to tell myself not to be perfect about it. And then I was able to do it at that point. I'm a very big perfectionist. And I was like, if I applied that to myself, I probably would have never started it. So I was like, crappy audio. All right. Bad scripting. Okay.
Okay, so I am a child of a perfectionist, and I vowed I would never be like her. And so my whole thing is good and done is better than perfect. Just get it up, because then you'll just learn the next time, right? You're okay, well, don't do that next video.
Yeah, I had to teach myself that because I drive my husband up the wall about my perfectionism, about how it's got to be perfect. And then I guess I went on a self-discovery journey that I was like, I'm holding myself back by trying to be perfect before I do anything. And so once I got past that mental barrier right there, that's when I started doing things quickly. And I messed up so many times, and I'm still learning. Um, but I'm proud of my growth because I was telling another person everything I've learned, and I'm like, oh, I didn't know I know that. I didn't know that. So,
I know, because sometimes there's a loop, and I can't remember what it's called, but I read it about perfectionism. And so what happens is that it's like a loop. Like, you have the idea, it has to be perfect, so then you re-record it. And so at the end of the day, sometimes you exhaust yourself so much trying to make it perfect, it flat out doesn't get done. And so perfectionism is like kind of is procrastination.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I thought that was so surprising.
Yeah. I remember doing my first audio, and I re-recorded it like 3 times, and I was like, I can't keep doing this. It takes time.
Like, I want to drive myself crazy.
Exactly.
So how long have you had the podcast up?
Since April of this year.
And how has it gone so far?
Oh, it's been a journey. It's just learning a lot of new things. I think the biggest hurdle I had to do was planning. I wasn't a planner. I'm a very like shotgun type of person. I had to learn that. It's slowly growing. It's not as like that perfectionist is in me. I want it to be like super popular right up there, but I'm learning to grow, learning the process. And I'm learning a lot with people, with authors, and with bookstagrammers and things like that. I had a few on. So it's been fun, real journey.
So what is the platform that you use for those that are listening that would like to start their own podcast? What are your biggest lessons learned? What do you use? What are like pitfalls that they could avoid?
Okay, so what the platform I use is called buzzsprout.com. It's a great hosting platform.
Say that again.
Buzzsprout.com.
Buzzsprout.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you can actually start for free on there and be able to load like an episode here and there, but you have to pay a membership to get more time to be uploaded.
Okay.
And what they do is that they can actually get it to Apple, to Google, to Amazon Music. The one thing they don't do is YouTube, and that's a learning curve for me. They don't
YouTube does not do it with anybody though. YouTube is its own, right?
Yeah.
So I've heard like StreamYard, they don't participate with StreamYard, Anchor, Spotify, like none of them.
No, because they require you to upload video with it, and it has to be like an MP4 instead of MP3, which is you traditionally upload with audio, just audio only podcast. So I had to learn how to edit audio that way. I have 2 audio systems, and now I'm having to learn. A big pitfall that I would say to avoid, and I just told this other person about this, is plan your content. And I just started. I just went into it. I just like, okay, next week I'm going. And I uploaded that episode. And then next week I was like, oh crap, I have to upload the next episode. So I'm rushing to get that episode, recorded, edited, and uploaded. And I was doing this for months on end, stressing myself to the point I almost quit, because I was like, I can't keep up with this. This is not worth it to me if I'm constantly like worried about what is my next thing, my next content. And I guess I had another podcaster come to me. She's like, oh, we have this thing where we planned out 3 months in advance. I'm like, what? 3 months in advance?
Say what?
So I took 2 or 3 weeks off from doing any podcasting or uploading. And I think you have to be okay with knowing when to stop and to regroup. And I regrouped. I planned out 4 months in advance of episodes. So I got September through December covered. And all I have to do is now edit and just put it up. And I recommend this to everybody. If you're starting a podcast, have a launch date that's like 3 months in advance. Get your interviews, get your episodes recorded, edited, and then have plenty of time to market your podcast. I wish I took the time to do that, but I was just so nervous about it that I was just like, I got to do it or I'll just chicken out and just quit. So that was my biggest lesson for that. Don't join Facebook groups about podcasting. I've learned so much that way, and I have a lot to say on what to do and not to do.
Okay, so I have, if we could take a half step back.
Yeah.
When you say plan your content, you're not only saying like, come up with your topics or your books or your, bookstagrammers. You're not only your guest, but you're literally talking about batch recording and having like an inventory to just launch.
Yeah,
That's
with this,
huge.
it was a big step for me. I spent all of August and just emailing authors, hey, I got you, I was afraid to say, hey, I have an open spot in November, and they were cool with it. And it's just like that was eye-opening for me, because I thought, oh, I got to get that next week for that author, or they're going to hate me. But no, it's really, it's like timing maybe their publish date, or just sending out emails. I sent out batches of emails just so I can go ahead and start getting it in, and because I knew I got to get that recorded, and then just timing it correctly. I just knew like, okay, if I had an episode that's going to be launching in November, then I said, hey, I can get you in the 1st of September for recording. I kind of coached them like, hey, this is when I can record, so there's plenty of time for me to edit because I do all the editing myself. So.
I think that's fascinating, because I do think that when people are like, I'll just do a podcast, and they're like, I got time during that week. And it is like a hamster wheel, right? And so,
Yeah.
and I do know, I'm a huge podcast listener, and I know that two different things is what I've seen. They batch record, so they're always ahead.
Yeah.
And then they also go on break, like they're like season 1, season 2.
Yeah.
Of course, the big ones, they podcast, every week in a row. Like Joe Rogan is on there forever,
right,
every week. we can aspire to be like him.
No, I know. I just came across his, and I was like, ah. So, yeah, it's this. I found that, like I said, it was stressing me out. Constantly wondering what to do next, and editing. Like an hour of raw footage can take you 4 or 5 hours of editing, depending on the size of editing you need to do. So I was constantly like trying to keep up, and I noticed that I was just hating the process when I realized that I was constantly procrastinating, because I think, oh, I got plenty of time, and next thing you know, I got to get this done in 2 days.
I was going to say, so editing. What are you editing? Why does it take you so long if it's just sound? Because I know like when people do these YouTube channels, and we all watch YouTube, right? So they'll show like me and your face, and then we'll talk about a topic, and then they insert some cute like, scenery, or you know what I mean?
Right.
So I know video does take a lot of extra time, but why does audio take that long?
So audio takes long because you're obviously editing ands, buts. You have to filler words, pauses. You actually have to listen from start to finish your audio. And one thing I should be doing is listening it the second time, but nobody's got time for that. And one thing I'm constantly battling is the sound correction. Your audio has to be really good. And before I learned, there's 2 techniques that I did it. And the first one took a lot longer. I actually had to section by section do my audio and get it normalized, because you have to actually have it at a certain decibel. But then I realized after doing more YouTube searching that there is an actual quicker way to do it. And you actually have to just go section by section, and you go through it. And like I said, it can take 4 or 5 hours just for an hour of raw footage. So.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So if I'm understanding you correctly, you're saying when I just said or so or but, you literally cut where I said it, or you cut, kind of like when we all do, I don't know, reels, or you take a video and then you trim it down. You're doing the same thing.
Yeah. Yeah. And then there's sometimes when I was first learning, I would say one thing, and then I was like, oh, an afterthought, I will have that thought and I'll say it. And then I was like, oh, that should have been like 5 minutes ago. And I would clip that and move it over. You can never tell, but that's what I would do. Or when I was first starting, I would be so nervous about it and so shaking that there would be like 2 minutes of silence on my audio, because I was like, I just got to get my crap together. I got to do this. So I had to filter all that out, coughing. And there was times where there was a dog barking. So I had to go like this for like a while, it's like, and then like another hurdle was getting like background noises out. It's a hurdle in itself, and it takes time to do,
Oh my gosh, bless your heart, Charity. I don't know if I'd have the patience. I almost think you have to be a perfectionist.
Well, actually, I love the process, but I have trouble like sitting down with dividing that much time. Yeah. So that's where my procrastinating was hurting me. I was like, oh, I got time, 2 days left. I got to rush to do this audio. And then when I realized like, hey, I'm just going to do an hour a day, just an hour to put my timer on. I'm going to focus on it and do an hour. And then I would just do it section by section, hour at a time, doing this audio. And then there's times where I had to find my best working hours. I realized I can't do audio editing in like in the afternoon. I can't do it because I'm sluggish. I'm tired. I just ate lunch. But then when I hit 5 or 7 o'clock, when I should be eating dinner, I'd hit these sprints, So it's just learning what you're, not good at per se, but when you thrive at doing the things that you're not always thrilled about doing.
Okay, so that's interesting because as authors, right, it's not only what you're saying, is you're talking about, tactics, right? You're the tactical learning, the mechanics, of both your software, but you're also having to learn it about yourself.
Yeah.
Like what kind of like discipline that you have. And I know that when I talk to a lot of authors, some write in batches, some write every day, some write in sprints. And so it's interesting to hear you're just the same as all of us.
Yeah.
You're having to figure out what is your, podcast discipline.
Yeah. And oddly enough, every author I come across, I have learned something new to apply to my podcast.
Really?
Every single time. There was this one person, oh man, no, it just left my head just as quickly as I thought about it. But the planning was a big one. She told me about how she just planned, she like had those times where she just planned it out and she planned on when she was able to do it. And I was like, okay, I'll just do that too, and just learning to like, all right, this is my best time. This is when I'm very focused. I'm going to dedicate it. And, it's just learning to discipline. I've never been good at that, especially when you're on your own. So.
Girl, no one is good at discipline. I mean, if we could all be like David Goggins.
Yeah, I just recently got into like calendar planning. I know that's just wild to hear, but it's a lifesaver.
Oh, like color blocking? Isn't that what it's called? Calendar blocking?
It's like so many different million ways. But I just have to like, it's like, because I'm also like, it's hard to describe. There's days like I just have these worst fatigues on the planet. And so I have to work around that. I know that, hey, my mornings are my best and my evenings are my best. I can't do anything in the afternoon. So, and then like I'm trying to balance reading, it's like when you have like 5 authors in line to read their books, it gets challenging.
Yeah.
Editing, I have to be very intentional. That's my word this year, is intentional. And
word.
Yeah. And it's like, you have to be intentional with your time. And in like, I spent like 14, 15-hour days just trying to get stuff done. And and I'm balancing another job too.
Oh my gosh. So
in a life.
You don't do this full time.
No, I don't. I'm aspiring to do it full time, but I don't. I'm fortunate to be able to spend as much time as I do on here.
That's wonderful. Bless your heart though, that fatigue. I mean, that's for real. There is so many, I know a lot of authors that battle like autoimmune or chronic pain or inflammation, and I'm thinking like, what is happening with the world? Like I do not know anything about that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I know that when you're a creative person and you rely upon, your creative juices to flow, and then you have these health issues come in, totally sidetracks what you achieve. And for you being on a tight deadline, it makes sense that you're like, let me go ahead and just, take August, batch these suckers, then I have it covered. And then, you know, I can do other things.
Yeah. And like concerning that, I noticed that there's like, I was experiencing it for like over 2 years and I just didn't want to be creative at all. And then I guess when I went to go see like hormonal health and things like that to get that, like to see start getting corrected, that's when my creativity started sparking. That's when I got, hey, like I should plan. And for me, I'm an insurance agent, so I October and December into January is my busiest season. I am full loaded working that. And so I knew like if I don't plan this now, I'm planning to fail.
Yeah. It will never happen.
Yeah, but in that regards though, it's like I just learned a new skill and now I'm like, okay, I'm gonna carry it on next season because this is nice. Not having to worry about what I'm gonna do. So
well, and aren't you proud of yourself? Like, I know that we shouldn't, you know, everybody's like, don't be prideful. But sometimes when you're a creative person and you want to do these ventures and you do teach yourself something new, I mean, my gosh, you're like, let me, you know, give myself a pat on the back because, you know, in insurance, right, you have your license, you have other people, like maybe you have older agents that you can reach out to, like, hey, have you seen this? Have you heard that? When you're creative, it can be very, very lonely. And you know, you don't always have those resources unless it's like YouTubing a million videos and teaching yourself.
yeah, I think that was one of the other reasons why it propelled me to keep moving forward because before I even started this, I was so down on myself. I had social anxiety. I was so scared to talk to people. And like I said, I tried YouTube, but I was shaking so bad and I quit because I was like, I can't do this. I'm not pretty. My voice is not great. And, you know, I was comparing myself to so many different people that were on YouTube and things like that, that I just already talked myself out of it before I can even start.
Oh, charity.
Yeah. And I think I went through some things. I had like some hardships that it affected me a lot. And I think it just finally kind of clicked. Like, I'm tired of being so down on myself. I'm tired of being defeated. I'm tired of being not feeling like I can't do anything in life because I'm the one who's telling myself that I can't do it. Nobody else is telling me. And I felt like book reading was such a lonely hobby for me. You know, I don't know many people that read, and especially the books I read, questionable things I read. And and that just got me propelled into this book reading world, and it's actually helping me meet to people. And that's when I noticed my confidence started shooting up through the air, not because they like me, but because I felt like, yes, I can finally do it. I know I can do it. I may not be the perfect person, but I can do it now. And that gave me such a confidence that surpasses everything I've learned so far on this podcast and through talking to people. And I've noticed that it's translating in my social life, that I'm not scared anymore. I'm doing things that I would think that's weird, but now I'm like, I don't care anymore. And you know, it's a beautiful thing that I've learned out of everything. That's what I learned. That's what I value the most in my podcast.
Oh my gosh. You know, can we just pause right there because kudos. Anxiety, loneliness, despair. I feel like those are the hardest emotions. You know, people think like love and passion and rage and anger. And I'm like, those are the easy ones because they're so big, right?
Right.
But it's like the ones that kind of creep in the middle of the night. And I feel like loneliness, despair, and anxiety are just like silent, people suffer in silence. So you can have like a really good friend and you think they're doing okay and they have anxiety or they are extremely lonely. And that's, you know, why I like to connect with people because, you know, with COVID, we were all shut in and it has really affected people's mental health. And I did not know that, you know, you can get anxiety at any time. I thought it was something like, you know, like a traumatic event, right? That anxiety. Or you're born with it. But I was talking to a doctor just the other week, and he's like, anyone at any point for any reason. And so that's why I'm so I am so happy to hear that you took the steps to change it. You know, like I feel like sometimes we have to get sick and tired of ourselves because like you read all these, like we were talking about David Goggins, right? Like you read all these people, you can scroll social media, inspiration, motivation, discipline, consistency,
Yeah.
It's all the same thing, right? But it's really like you pulling yourself up by your bootstraps. And it's not even like for a period of time, it's like every day making the choice, like, okay, I'm not going to let this win out. Today I'm going to do this for me. I'm going to be strong. I'm going to bootstrap it. And I may be horrified by the results. And I may want to record it 3 times. And I may hate, and you're not your beautiful soul. And I feel like you could be on video. You could be on YouTube because it's really what matters on the inside. I mean, you're an attractive girl already. And then you tell your story of what's going on. I just feel like it would be a total package. But again, it's what you feel comfortable doing and putting out in the world. But I mean, my gosh, you've got to be proud of yourself.
Oh, every day. I mean, I did recently make a reel, and I did like this montage of everything I did in the last few months, and I was crying and bawling.
Right?
And I was telling my husband that I was like, I am so proud of myself for how far I've come. And how it's not even about the success, the numbers, it's the fact that I grew as a person.
It's in here and it's
Exactly.
in here. Healing.
And,
it's so healing.
It's the best thing I've ever experienced. And it clicked in my head that day that I've grown. I'm not saying that I'm totally not feeling the feelings. There's not a day that I don't go like, crap, I don't want to like talk to this person. I'd rather be in my introvert soul.
Yeah.
But I'm just happy that I didn't die within myself because, there's a lot of things that happened in my life and I didn't let it, define me. And so I'm glad that I got this through me and this is who I am now. This is who you see. And it's beautiful, and I didn't think anyone would be able to see that or get a chance to see it because of my fears and my anxiety and all that stuff.
I know. I feel like anxiety is just a prison of our mind. And again, there's a million studies on it. When I was talking to this doctor, he's like, anxiety is so hard to measure. He says, it's not like we can, put it on a slide and you stick it under a microscope. He said, it's literally, people and their feelings and how it manifests. And so, and he goes, but it definitely holds people back from their potential. And I always think like that is so tragic because I am a very spiritual and religious person. And I feel like everybody here is for a reason. And so like, you don't know who benefits from your voice and your story and to be able to see like your strength coming through, right? And if you would have let these life situations, because you're an overcomer, if you would have not overcome them to do this, who would be missing out on your gift?
It's just crazy to use those words because I never thought myself as a overcomer. But I'm like, ooh, now I have another proud repertoire.
But Charity, aren't you? Aren't you?
I mean, I'd like to say yes.
Yeah.
So.
And so that's what I think is so beautiful about it. And sometimes, we are, oh my gosh, our worst critic, right? Like your husband or your support system can be like, oh my gosh, that's good. But you don't believe it because, 1, you're a perfectionist, and 2, we just can't see the forest through the trees. So sometimes we don't see people how they see us. We may see us 5 years ago, 10 years ago, that little girl, that bad situation, right? We don't see people for we don't see ourselves where people see us now. And so to me, that's when you do that reel of like all your accomplishments and you're like, damn girl, you did good. Like you've really come a long way.
Yep.
I mean, like hell, I think like Hollywood and all those people do it. We always see like their progression. Why don't we ever do our own reel of like how much we've grown and how far we've come?
Yeah, I think it's a really good way to measure your own personal growth, and that's what clicked for me, and that's what helped boost my sense of self-worth, because that was the whole point of my journey, is figuring out my self-worth and not my worth in others. And that was my biggest issue, was always worried about what other people thought about me. And once I got past that mental, and I'm not saying I don't never think about it, but I think that's just been my journey, is finding my worth, and I found my worth,
That's,
so.
that's beautiful. But don't you think women suffer from that the most? Like growing up, we were like, children should be like seen but not heard, or play small, or don't stand out, or don't wear that, or don't say that, or don't, try and sit at the men's table. I feel like there's so much like just crap that gets piled on women, and that diminishes, and then that's just societal norms. And then if you get into any kind of relationship with the wrong, person, or the wrong friend or best friend or boyfriend, they can kind of pile on all that junk that is already layered on us.
Well, and oddly enough, I came across a book called like Children of Emotional Damaged Parents, and
Mm.
I love my family, but it came from a very critical family, and I didn't
Mm-hmm.
realize how much that translated into my own life,
Like,
where I was just so worried about just doing it wrong. That's the perfectionist that was in me coming out. Like, I was afraid to do it wrong. What if people hate it? What if they just immediately cancel me out? And then once I realized where it was coming from, it helped me build on that, because if you don't know the source, you're just kind of like just
well, you're,
kind of paddling,
you're
you
treating the
know?
symptoms if you don't know the
Yeah.
root cause. Yeah.
Yeah, so I think once I realized that I was being my worst self-critic, that's helped a lot mentally for myself, because that was holding me back quite a
Okay, can we just take a moment and be like, yay? I
bit.
know. It's so exciting. I have to tell you, like, I was fearful of doing, okay, so I got invited a long time ago to do a podcast.
Mm.
It was on Zoom. And of course, we've all been on Zoom for the last whatever, right? And so I was nervous, and I was just like, oh my gosh, saying, what if I sound like an idiot? What if I stumble? What if I say the wrong thing? And so that's when I started doing these Let's Go Live every Thursday, because one, I wanted to meet people where they're at. Like, a lot of people can't go out, they can't get a babysitter. And I was like, I just want to connect with people all over the world and find out their author journey, those under the Bookstagram umbrella. Like, what are they doing? What are their journey? Why? I find it fascinating. But also at the same time, to help me get over like that fear of being, on video, or, what if I do say the wrong thing, or my voice is too high, or sometimes I do this, or I use too many gestures, and I'm just like, screw it. Like, when I
Yeah.
die, I don't want to get to heaven and be like, oh, this could have been your life, but instead it's over here.
Yeah, I think my worst, I'm still working through it, is that my laughs sounds, I don't know, to me it sounds really weird on my laughs and audio. For some reason audio picks up where I'm like, ah, you know. So I'm trying to like coach myself through that. It's like, it's not bad, it's okay. People might find it interesting, but I'm like, I'm not there yet. I'm just gonna go right here, take it out.
There's this sound, be like, oh, no.
Oh, it's the beauty of audio
I
editing.
know. I would just leave it all in, but that's me.
I'm trying. I'm learning. I'm a very private person too, as well. So there's a lot of times where I share with people on recording about myself, and then I take it out, and I shouldn't do that, but I'm just so weird like that, but I'm trying to open up. I'm starting to slowly keep things in, but I'm still scared about people knowing who I am. I don't think it's weird, but I'm like, but I don't know what people will think. So.
Well, and it's hard, right? So when you start putting yourself out there, you do worry, like, what is someone going to pick up on something and then judge me
Mhm.
for it, right? Because when you are putting yourself out in the world, you get both sides. You get to make new friends and have new relationships, but at the same time, you have the
Yeah.
haters that come along and they say certain things. So I totally understand.
Yeah, and I don't know if this is healthy or not, but there's just sometimes where I do try to find negative reviews of things, just so like, hey, they are the idol in my eyes, but even they get comments that someone didn't like something of the other. And that's what helps me sometimes,
Mm-hmm.
just keep pushing, because, I'm like, not everyone's gonna like me. That's like that 1% is never gonna like you no matter what you do. So that's what sometimes I gotta tell myself.
Oh, I know. I think that's so the case, because you can talk about like, you can say the word Taylor Swift and it's either like Swifties or none. I just feel like everything nowadays is just so like yes or no,
Yeah.
right or left. It's like,
Hmm.
well, I
Yeah, so I'm
like some
constantly
of
thinking
her
about that.
songs.
Yeah. Um, yeah, I kind of starting to realize that, either you like it or you don't.
Yeah.
Even with BookTube, you kind of do that. You either like that person or you don't, and they can be the sweetest person, but you're like, I just don't like how they talk about books. So it's just I kind of just decided I'm just going to learn who I am and just project that out there, and people will gravitate towards that, and that's the only thing that's keeping me alive here. So,
I think you're totally right. Your tribe will find you or you will find them.
hmm.
Yeah. Because think about when we read all these books, oh my gosh, there's so many books on the market. There's so
Yep.
many, new indie authors. And so sometimes you just don't resonate with their writing style. Maybe it's not their writing style. Maybe it's their characters. Maybe you're like, I don't
Hmm.
like the story. So you
Yeah.
can have a favorite author, you like everything, and then they write that one story, you're like, meh.
Yeah, and one thing is like mood reading. I talk about this quite often is that I got burned out on one person's book, and it's a very big author. And I got
Mm.
burned out. I was like angry at the world. And then when I read this popular fantasy book, I'm just like, I'm not sold on it. 4 star, you know, you know, because I wasn't in the mood for that section of the book, and it's
Yeah.
just, it's an interesting adventure, right? And just in that's like a whole nother hour, right? Just talking about that.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. How do you decide what books to read, professionally for your
Hmm.
podcast, and which ones do you read for personal pleasure?
So I'm a nuts person. You're gonna laugh. I usually read about 2 physical books, an ebook, and an audiobook at the same time. Um,
Oh,
audiobook is my for pleasure. It's definitely like I take that sucker with me everywhere. Um, I usually like to do read-alongs in my physical copy, and I have a fun book, physical book, and then my ebooks, if like the author sends me an ebook or they are on Kindle Unlimited, then I try to make sure I do my ebook because then I can take that anywhere, or if I want to lay in bed and be lazy, I can lay right there without the light on.
yeah.
Um, how I decide, that was another big lesson I had to learn.
Ooh.
Yeah, so when I was planning out my second season, I obviously I was very fortunate that there was a lot of authors that reached out to me, and then I was reaching out to other authors, and I didn't read their books. And and I thankfully so far I haven't came across any books that were like, I can't do it. But it's like you said, the writing style may not be for me, and it's a good book, but it's just not for me. And I still had to finish it and everything. Um, so I had to learn immediately, like, I have to read the book before I do this interview because I don't want to be unauthentic. I don't want to promote a book that I don't believe in. And I chose fantasy as for my main niche for my podcast because I never get burned out on fantasy. I get burned out on all kinds of other genres. Romance is my recent one right now. It's in the doghouse right now.
Y'all broke up.
Um, yeah, we broke up. We might get back together for the fifth breakup act or something. Um, but fantasy has never been something I've never got tired of, and and I haven't been too picky about which books I've been picking. It's just as long as I feel like it's a really good book, and I just go for it, and I'm not hard to please. I'm that person. um, but I would love to tell you my formula, but maybe that's next season. I'll have a better idea.
Well, okay, but fantasy is a huge genre.
Yeah.
High, urban, dark.
Hmm.
So, do you have a preference? Any of it? Magic
Uh,
systems vary. There could be, paranormal elements to it. There could be shifters in it. Like fantasy is a very big umbrella.
I am a junkie. I I just I love paranormal. I love urban. I love I the things I don't gravitate towards is dark fantasy. If it has any too dark and gruesome elements into it, then it's like cruel bullying and things like that. I might not pick it up.
Well, okay, Cherry, that's a good point. What does dark mean to you? Where's the line?
Like part of me doesn't want to like name books, but it's
no,
like
but
bullying.
like topics,
Yeah.
like where's the line? What do you not want to read? What are triggers that you're like, no?
So far, like torture. I don't like to read that. There is like, situations sexually to women. I can't do that.
Oh yeah.
If it's really graphic, it's one thing if it talks about it, but if it's graphic, it's not like anything against the author. It's just not my style.
Right.
Things like that, and like not paranormal, but like a more of like horror fantasy. I can't do horror fantasy. You can almost say I'm fluffy, but
you're like, give me some Fayman, a couple of shifters.
Right, yeah. I can read almost anything, but if it crosses the line of too dark and too sinister and too gruesome, then I just like, just not me. I've been really gravitating a lot of sci-fi fantasy lately.
Really?
And
okay, so
yeah,
that would be other planets, aliens. What else is included?
There's two in particular I picked up. It's heavily fantasy world where it's make believe and all that stuff, but they have a lot of like metal flying ships and cannons and guns and all this stuff. And there's one
like almost like adventure.
Yeah. And I've been really, really loving those. There's one I'm reading now that I was thankful to get a copy, and it has that elements. Like they have the hoverboat in the sandy desert, but there's magic, and I'm like, I'm for this. so
okay, because
yeah.
I was thinking like some of that stuff is to me fascinating that the authors can write it, because sci-fi and futuristic get into things that aren't created yet, right? So you as an author are literally having to create, we can world build and we can create within the, Feyman or, like, but when you get into like sci-fi and other galaxies and other worlds, I really find there are some really talented authors out there, because you're literally making something that we don't have yet.
Yeah. And I think that's been really interesting is I ask a lot of every author, how did you come up with this idea?
For real?
And
how do that?
One person said she was watching a video game. Their husband was, and she just suddenly got an idea. There was there was one where I got so many of them. She had a dream. There was one where man, I got like a plethora. Man, I wish they were coming up to, she just wrote it when she was like 12 or when she was very young, because she was told not to do it a certain way, and then she just wrote it, and then she revisited when she went back to college, and I thought that was very fascinating.
That is cool.
A lot of times they just get random inspiration as they're walking, and they're like, oh yeah, let me do this. So
do you then do an interview with the author, or is that your read along, or what, when you're reading a book, what platform do you put it in? Is it going to be a review on IG? Is it going to be in your podcast? Is it interview? Like, how do you decide all that?
So,
because that can be tricky.
Oh yeah, that's where my evolution of learning has come into play. I really had to narrow down my processes because it was really overwhelming me, per se, to have 15 billion things going on at once.
Yep.
So I just had to narrow it down. Like, that's what I decided to do, is like start narrowing it down and stick to it. So like for my podcast, I go, okay, I'm going to do a read along, do book reviews with, or book discussions with bookstagrammers. I'm going to do author interviews, and I'm going to do just book discussions by myself. 4 categories. That's it. That's all I'm doing.
It's kind of a lot.
Yeah. And then then IG was getting confusing, because there's books I read that I don't do on podcasts. So I am actually tomorrow going to create a spreadsheet of everything I want to post in the next 2 months, so I know what I'm going to post and what I'm going to talk about. And then on my blog, I just created another one. What am I going to post? Is it a book review? Is it a blog review or your blog article? It's like I just decided that I'm going to know when I'm going to post, and then I'm going to put what I want to post, and then how I'm going to post it. And then I put check marks of when I get it done. And that helped me out so tremendously, because I can get overwhelmed very easily about some of the smallest things. And I just like, that's how it kept me focused. And now I'm moving forward a lot faster, because I'm just finally like, this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to do. And I don't deviate off of it. And I'm already thinking about different things for my third season, like how I'm going to tackle that one. But I just accomplished this one. I accomplished scheduling. So,
Well, okay, because what you're saying then is you're literally using each platform in a different way. So it's, because I know some people say make one piece of content and then you put it out across, and you're saying, no, I'm not doing that. I'm using like the spreadsheet with your 4 pillars for your podcast. Your IG is something separate, and then your blog posts are something separate.
So yeah, recently I started trying to cross. One thing that helped me a little bit was I started writing blog articles. And then I was like, then when I was sitting here one day and I go, what should I talk about on my podcast? I was like, wait a minute, I have blog articles to talk about stuff.
Yeah.
So now I can like cross link on, about my podcast and on my website, and then vice versa. So to help with cross marketing on my own platforms. And on IG, I do still book reviews and things like that, and also market for the podcast. So it's like interchangeably. And now that I'm explaining it, I'm like, man, I wonder, I'm like going nuts sometimes.
Well, because your IG, you have it, what, Booktrovert Reader. And so do you have a separate IG for the podcast, or is that for you?
I did start one eventually, and then I noticed that I was having such a hard time managing both at the same time.
It's a lot.
And then it's a lot. And I just, one person, and I wish I remember which author told me this. She told me that you should just focus on one platform and just focus really well on it. And I was like, you know what? IG, one account. I got my followers on there. They know me. I'm just going to stick to that. Yeah. It's just, I'm like, I parked the name at least on IG if I wanted to do something with it. I don't know. I've been going back and forth so much on it that I had to shelf it, because it was actually, when I'm indecisive about something, I stop everything and my creativity stops. So I had to shelf it and then maybe revisit later.
Well, and it's hard. I know there are some authors that they do have 2 channels. And I'm like, how do you do all the things that, we have to like market and edit and format and write the book? And, I'm like, how are these people doing like 2 different IGs? Or they'll do like IG and TikTok and Facebook, and they run a Facebook group. And I'm like, that's just, I must need either too much sleep or I don't have enough hours in the day.
It's not just managing one account.
Yeah.
And, and I'm also managing my other business as well. So it's just like, you just got to be very strategic and know what your limits are. And then once you start getting I think that's what I'm going to try to do, is get a rhythm, get something I'm good at, perfect that stage, and then move on to something else that I've been wanting to do. Because I kept starting things and then overwhelming myself, that I had to scale back and go, okay, let me go to the basics. And it's just simple things as scheduling is helping me get the foothold I need to know what to do next, and when to plan it, when to edit it, all that fun stuff. So
I think this is such a fascinating discussion, because no one talks about processes. And that's really what you're talking about, is like, change management, process management, because we get into these things as a creative and you're like, oh my gosh, this will be fun. I want to do this. I want to do that. But then when you have so many, like, how do you manage this big thing?
Yeah, it's a learning process, and it's the most beneficial. I'm not a planner. I'm a very whimsy, let's just go. I hate planning, but it's been the most beneficial. If anyone wants to start a podcast, plan.
Well, let me ask you this. So this is your first year. You have the rest of the year already booked up, ready to go. what is in store for next year? What would you like to do, change, add, delete? That's always fun, right? That's the fun stuff. It's just being able
I'm already doing it, you know? I'm already moving on to the next season in my head, and I'm still, you know, even though I scheduled everything out and I have most of my interviews done, I'm already on to the next, because I know like by October, I have to start getting January ready to go.
Oh, that's just next month.
So yeah, literally next month or November. So I decided that maybe I'm going to play with, okay, this is romantasy month. This is urban fantasy month. This is this kind of month,
like a
theme
per month.
Yeah, a theme to kind of like, so I'm not like jumping around quite a bit.
People
and kind
love
of like
themes too. They love them. Yeah.
And then I want to start entertaining, having a platform where if I do my reading longs, you if you subscribe with me, you can like do the read-alongs with me live compared to waiting for the podcast to go live. So that's what I'm entertaining right now. But it's just so like there that I'm a little nervous about it and scared that I'm like, oh wait.
Okay, so
we'll see.
Would that be like an invited guest to read along, like on YouTube or on IG?
Kind of like Patreon.
Okay, so do you have a Patreon?
Not yet. And another thing I'm looking at is video podcasts as well. So to be more in front of a camera instead of seeing a still shot on YouTube. So that's another thing I'm going to venture into, and it's scary, and especially Patreon, because that thought of saying, hey, who wants to hear you talk about things, so we'll see how it goes. That's my plans. And then the themes, I want themes, because then I can batch my content a little bit better. And then on IG, I can, market my podcast by batching.
Yeah, I mean, I would think the themes, marketing wise, would be so fun. We see that with books, right? You'll start to see all like, oh gosh, what do they call it? Like pumpkin spice. I always call them like the pumpkin spice. When Starbucks comes out with that, like everybody goes nuts. You see that.
You see the reels.
Yes, you see it all over. And so that's when you start seeing the books. And then, we'll see Christmas. Then we'll see, the Valentine's. So I think themes will be really fun. Patreon, I was talking to a couple other authors, and they do Patreons, and they have different. One of them, wow, she has all these levels. I'm like, ooh, girl, like, again, how do you do all the things that you do? Like, she must have like 8 levels.
Right.
I know.
Wow.
I was like, okay, well, that is overwhelming. And then she, she writes and stuff like that. But I know Patreon, you have to put together your levels and your package. And some of them are really basic. And so I think that'll be exciting to see what you do. So if you do video podcasting, it wouldn't be on YouTube, it'd be on your Patreon.
Yeah, that's why my ultimate goal, if I would try to do this backwards, I would never have done it. But now that I'm getting confidence and I'm not so concerned about what am I looking like or something like that, I think I have the confidence to pursue that next year. So I'm looking forward to that, and then hopefully the Patreon, because I want to be able to create that club for people, for people to talk about books and to share specific books, and so that's my goal for next year.
That is exciting. I just love setting goals and brainstorming and just hearing what other people are working on, because to me that is inspiring, right?
Yeah, it can be intimidating. Even just the thought, just talking about it, I'm scared. I'm like scared crapless just thinking about it. I'm like nervous, but I mean, it took me 4 weeks to even do a broadcast channel because I was so scared.
I never even know what to put on those. I see where people have them, but I'm like, what do I say? Like what do I say that I'm not already saying in stories, or I always
And I think my thought is that if people were more invested in my podcast, that's what I'll use it for, because I have all kinds of different genres following me, and they're not going to always want to know about fantasy. So that's why I kind of did that. And then I asked more generic questions on my stories, like, what was the worst book you ever read or something like that. Stupid stuff like that, just to get like I use my stories to help with content as well, and
Yep.
I'm going to be utilizing that a little bit more with polls and things like that because people want to talk about their opinions, and I want to hear their opinions, negative or positive. I love it.
Nice.
So
That's a smart idea.
I love it all. So,
well, how do people are you open for submissions, or would you really prefer like you pick the people, you pick the books, or are you inviting people in the Bookstagram world or authors to submit to you?
oh, I love that you asked me that. I love that you asked me that because I do have a be a guest form on my the link in my bio.
Okay.
And you can apply to be a guest. And some people, I tell authors that are on my Facebook groups that like 90 times out of 10, I will accept you because I just want to know you. And I'm always needing content. So I'm like, hey, come on. I'm happy. The only thing I say, just let me have access to your book. I may request like, hey, can I read your book before I accept you on the podcast? But a lot of times I don't say no. A lot of times I just say yes. Hey, come on. Come join me.
Well, that's good though for those that are listening that are in the fantasy, genre, because I think exposure. You're right. Everybody needs content. I feel like people think like, oh, I don't want to ask, or who am I to ask her? And you're just like, everybody needs content. There's I think that website called Podcast Guest or something like that.
Yeah, I got that on there.
Yeah, and they're always looking for people. Yeah.
Yeah, and oddly enough, this was surprising to me. There is this author, she's a debut author. She had no reviews, not even a book cover yet. And she has her book in editing, and she asked to be on my podcast. I was like, okay. Like I'll set it to when your book is going to be published, which is like, hey, I needed something for November. You're filling my need. I'm helping you out. This is beautiful.
Yeah. Good for her.
So don't be afraid to ask. You'll be surprised about how often bookstagrammers or book podcasters are so happy to have people come on their podcast without them having to reach out. It's hard to like always constantly sending emails and not hearing back sometimes. But so when people are coming on to coming to you and say, hey, I would like to be on there, I'm like, oh, okay.
Yes.
So.
Okay, we all heard it. She's open, accepting yes.
Next year. I think I have one more opening. I have one more opening, I believe in November or December. One more opening, but I might fill it with something. But I'll be planning on next year. So if you need to market your book next year, hit me up,
Oh, you heard it. Okay, so I have a few more questions. They're rapid fire. So are you ready?
Oh. Okay.
They're super intense. Super serious.
We haven't talked about serious yet. I don't know what it is.
Yeah. So, ebook or physical book?
This is painful. Oh. Ebook, because I could carry it everywhere with me.
I know, everywhere. Favorite reading spot?
Oh, it's in my library room. I have a comfy chair that I read in, and I'm not allowed to talk about work, and it's just perfect just reading.
You have a library room?
I did. It was my dream since I was a child. Talk about like wanting to achieve something. That was it.
Oh man, I bet it has just like good vibes. You walk in there and you can like close the door and you're just like, life is on the other side.
It smells like books in there. That's my favorite part. I go.
That's so cute. I love it. Favorite movie to book adaptation?
Ooh.
Yep, that's a hard one.
I'm one of those people that will always say the book is always better.
Yep. You purist.
I'm a purist. I will not profane against those books.
I refuse.
Why do you ask these questions? This is terrible. I could say there's a classic called North and South by Elizabeth Gaskell. I think that's how she said I think it's better than Pride and Prejudice. And the movie is made by BBC. That one's my ultimate favorite.
That's an older one, right?
Yeah, or 2013, I don't know, around there. And it's an older classic book too. And it's yeah, it's really good. It's no longer on Netflix or anything. You actually have to rent it from the library or buy it off of Amazon now. And I did buy a copy, but that's my favorite. But if I were to go reverse, well, I'm gonna get in trouble. I love the Bridgerton series, and it's not fantasy. I love the Bridgerton series over the books. It's shameful. Fantasy has let me down in the movie genre, so I'm still waiting for some redemption. Aragon.
Okay, you know what I like? Okay, Bridgerton is good, right? They like zhuzhed it up. They've kind of sexed it up, but I like, this is so cheesy, the Beauty and the Beast. You know what, like Emma Watson.
Emma. Yeah,
right?
I think so. I don't know. I'm not very good at
How
stars.
cute was that?
Yes.
Okay, I thought they did, what is that, live action? Isn't that what it's called?
Yeah, live action movies. Yeah,
okay, I thought
for Disney.
The one was really good. It was pretty cute.
Yeah, it was true to its original, so that's why I liked it.
Although they made Gaston's friend, like, you know, they didn't like gay undertones. I don't know if they ever came out outwardly as gay, but gay undertones, and you know that was definitely not in the the original.
I mean, they're changing it up to be more. How would you say?
Just more modernize it.
Yeah, so it's like even Little Mermaid was definitely revolutionary.
Yeah.
So I haven't seen that one yet. I'm not a big Disney person, oddly enough, but yeah.
I have kids, so you end up watching all of them.
Yeah.
Okay, do you prefer standalones or series?
Oh, series for sure.
Oh.
I don't think I love standalones, don't get me wrong, but sometimes I love the world so much I never want it to end.
Yeah,
so if it's seven books, I'm like, yes. There's a paranormal series I'm starting to get into. It's like 13 books long, and I'm like, even better.
Bring it.
Bring it. I'm a junkie. Yeah.
You're like, I can quit anytime.
I'm no quitter.
Okay, favorite book, boyfriend, or protagonist, or villain? Because sometimes we love a bad villain.
I mean, Ryson is like always the top one, but I've been telling some of my friends that I have room for another, and I'm just waiting for him to come into my life and materialize, you know?
Okay, we all love Rise. Okay,
yeah, we all love
so cute, though. I do like Cassian. You don't like Cassian?
No, not particularly. I actually kind of like. Oh man, there's some good ones I've read lately. There's Once Upon a Broken Heart. That was a good one.
Mm-hmm.
The Cruel Prince. I like the morally gray. Like they're morally gray characters.
Don't we all? And if they treated you like that in person, you'd be like, I'm gonna knock.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna suck them.
Exactly. But you're like, but in my book, boyfriend, treat me that way.
You live the fantasy life in those.
I know, it's so funny. Okay, favorite opening line from a book?
It was The Cruel Prince. I think it was more of like chapter 1. And she said like there's no longer fish sticks and ketchup in here. And I thought that was very powerful because if you're familiar with The Cruel Prince, she was living in the mortal world and then thrown into the fairy world. And that was a big adjustment in her life, was just removing that. And I thought that was epic. It was the only sentence in the first chapter, and it went straight to the second chapter. If anything, and I have a lot more. I've been getting the last 3 books. I've been getting better about writing quotes down. Yeah. And I have a lot. But that was the one that stuck out to me the most.
That's kind of cute, though. Most overrated book, in your opinion? We're going to spill some secrets.
Overrated book. It's like there's moments where I have to look at my Goodreads.
What did you say?
I have to look at my Goodreads just to revisit all those books. I don't have, like, okay, this is not an overrated book, but I just didn't like go, yeah. You know, the fourth wing, I loved it, but not to the point of book hangover. So if I had to put anybody in the category in my mind, that would be it. It's not that I hate it or anything like that. I'm looking forward to the second book, and I pre-ordered it and everything.
Yeah.
But I was coming out of my slump, my romance hatred into that book, so I'm gonna reread it again to see if I can fall in love with that.
Is wildly popular.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I've been finding that I've been picking up some other books, and I'm just like, oh.
What is the last book that made you cry?
Oh, actually, just recently, what was the book called? I just have to look it up real quick because it was that big of an impact. It was talking about grief. No, it was Divine Rivals, and it was talking about grief in a sense of that it's going to be hard every day to go through your grief, but every day you can look forward to the next day with hope and everything. And the way that she said it kind of really touched my heart because I had experienced grief. Yeah. I have experienced losing a loved one, and I was coming out of that. And when I read that book, it just hit me really hard because it just told me that that was my journey, is that I persevered. And I looked forward to the next day with hope. And that's kind of helped me with the podcast is that when I was like a year and a half into it when I started the podcast. Mm-hmm. And so that was so encouraging to me that of my journey. And I loved it so much. I did write it down, and I'm terrible about remembering it.
Oh, but at least, I feel like sometimes things come into our life exactly when we need them. So it sounds like that book came along right when you needed it and you're in your grieving process.
Right. And it's like that what I loved about it, how it touched, is just like you're not going to get over it, but it is going to get easier, not because of like your circumstances, but because it's just you're having hope in the future.
Yeah. So. In one of my books that I wrote, they both lost a parent. Mm-hmm. And so he says to her, he's like, grief is something you carry with you. Mm-hmm. It's never to be solved.
Yeah.
Yeah. I understand that. Mm-hmm. Do you prefer to read we already answered this, one book at a time or multiple books at a time?
Multiple books. I used to be a one book person. But I don't do it for efficiency. I do it because I can't control myself and I have to have like something in my hands at all times. Like, my ebook is for the bed and for the dining table. The audiobook is when I'm doing tasks, and physical book is when I'm actually self-caring myself.
I love that. I love that you have different places, like special places for each. That is so cute.
Yeah, I like it. It's just how I know some people can't do it. And my husband asked me one time, like, how do you know the difference? I was like, okay, let me go this. Let me break it down more. Audio is for romance because I can't sit and read romance for some reason. My ebooks is just for my Kindle Unlimited. Anything I can regurgitate, I'm taking it in, like 200 pages now. Yeah. And then my physical books is because it takes me forever to read physical books, so that's what I do. Well, plus you have to
do your physical books in the library room.
Mm-hmm. I worked hard for that. That's just my one dream. That's all I wanted.
That is so cute. Okay, last question. Which book character would you want to be your best friend?
Oh gosh, I just realized I don't really have favorites. It's terrible. I mean, like, it's so bad that this is the problem with reading too many books. You're already moving on to the next book, and you're like,
and what was that book about?
Yeah, it's just I realized 2 days ago I have to write my reviews right away, or I'm going to forget it all.
They're gone.
And the details are gone, but I'm doing another process that's going to help me with that. So stay tuned.
Okay, I want to follow-up interviews so we can just break down these processes. Like when you get it all done, I'm like, okay, we're going to have a master class. Charity's going to bring her spreadsheets, and we're going to be like on the Zoom board.
So, friend, it's so hard to say because I always love every single character that I come across. There's hardly ever a few times I don't like a character.
Yeah.
I don't have a favorite. it. I'm not going to play this
I
game
love
with
them
you.
all.
Book Bag Friend was hard enough. I tried. So.
Well, Charity, it has been wonderful. I know we're over our time,
Yeah.
and you are such a doll. We have got to do this again, no doubt. Like, I didn't even scratch the surface on the majority of my questions.
Yeah, I have a lot to say.
I love it, though. I mean, you have dropped so many gems for people that are wanting to do a podcast or wanting to do Bookstagram. And that's what this is for, you know, to get out, to help, be in service to people. So thank you so much. And I'm going to be hitting you up in the DMs to see what your availability is, because I am booking in November.
Okay. Oh, yeah. I'll love to do it.
Okay, great. But we will continue chatting like we always do on Instagram.
All right. That sounds good.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.